Breast or bottle? This is a question every new mom is faced with after giving birth on how their infant will eat. Well, today, 4 moms are here to talk about what drove their decisions for their feeding choices. Welcome to all of you, and thank you guys so much for being here. We'll start with you, Nadia. So you have 3 children, and you have a new baby girl, and you're exclusively breastfeeding her, but your older children, you breastfed and supplemented. What's the difference this go round?
Well, with my youngest daughter, I chose to exclusively breastfeed because formula is expensive, and I did not want to. I did not want to spend the money. With my older 2, I was in school full time while they were young, and so I was on WIC with them, and so that helped. Just WIC being able to provide that formula. But now I'm not on WIC, and so I looked at the cost of formula yesterday when I was at the grocery store. I think it was like $30 a can, and so I just did not want to spend that type of money on formula. And I felt like I could do it exclusively breastfeed. It is hard. I do work full time, but I just made that commitment to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do until I'm ready to wean her off of breast milk.
Okay. Ellie, what about you? You have a little boy, new little boy.
I do.
And are you breastfeeding, bottle feeding?
Well, when I was in the hospital, I did start off breastfeeding.
Okay.
And before I even went into labor, I did purchase a breast pump. I had every intention of breastfeeding, and at one point I just didn't produce. I kept trying, and we decided to formula feed instead because it was what was right for the family.
Right. Okay. And you work. Has your job been supportive as far as all of this is concerned?
Well, I didn't have much time for maternity leave. I had about 5.5 weeks, and that was part of the issue. Was I kept thinking, I'm going back to work. I could keep trying and try to breastfeed, but by the time my milk may have come in, it would have been time to go back to work and for him to go to daycare, and we would probably be formula feeding anyway.
Right. Okay. Patrice, what about you? You're a mom of 3. Breastfeeding, bottle feeding?
Both.
Okay.
Right now, yeah. So, but he gets about 5 ounces. I'm supplementing with formula, so he gets about 5 ounces of formula per day. My goal was to exclusively breastfeed, but once he started daycare, unfortunately, I didn't have enough breast milk stored up. That is one of my biggest regrets, was not investing in that, in the double pump ahead of time while we were still at home together. And so I haven't been able to, get that storage up.
Right.
So supplementing with formula, as I did my oldest 2, and I know formula is a great thing, but I am determined to continue to breastfeed, until he's a year old.
Okay. Monica, what about you? You're a stay-at-home mom, and you have 3 under the age of 3.
I do.
And
well, yeah. I do.
Practically.
Practically, yeah.
And so you're the newest baby, breastfeeding or bottle feeding?
So right now we're strictly bottle feeding.
Okay.
Started out breastfeeding. I love breastfeeding. I actually encourage new moms to breastfeed. With me, I actually had to have a cesarean. So with having a C-section in the hospital and trying to recover from that, the baby was demanding. I could tell he was hungry, and having started out, it just seemed like when I would breastfeed, he would still want more, and I'm in pain. So at that point, I needed to supplement because he was demanding more milk, and I was just not able to give it to him like he needed it. So we decided to supplement in the hospital, and from then I did continue breastfeeding, but then we had other situations to come up and help determine to just strictly bottle feed. So that's where we are now.
And I hear a lot of you guys talking about, at least you started out breastfeeding in the hospital, and we have stats that say from the CDC that say, about 61% of moms start out breastfeeding, but by the time they hit 6 months, like 28% are the only ones remaining still breastfeeding. Why do you think that is? Because some of you guys have actually experienced that.
I think that's just the stress of life. With my oldest 2, like I said, I started off exclusively breastfeeding for about 6 months, and I was in school with both of them. And so, just having other things to do besides, raising a baby full time, I think, formula is just easily available to, mix it up and feed it to your baby, especially when they're crying, and, someone else can feed them. And so breastfeeding, it is demanding. And so I think it's just the stress of life and everything that goes on with it.
Monica, I saw you saying yes.
Yeah, it's definitely more convenient. My family, we were actually living in Chicago, Illinois, and that's where I had my son. and we had to make a sudden move due to loss of employment on my husband's end, and so that meant that with me being a stay-at-home mom, we didn't have any income. He's originally from Mississippi, and we have family here. They were very supportive, and we had to up and move when my son was like a month and a half. And even the trip, those many hours, just think breastfeeding would have been great, but I would have to take him out of the car seat, So the formula came in handy. It was very convenient. And again, I love breastfeeding. I would encourage it for any mother. But again, as Nadia mentioned, that with the things that go on in life, a lot of times, they're just these situations and circumstances that you have to make a decision. So is it the best decision? Maybe not. However, it works for you and it works for your family.
Yeah. Well, I'm a mom and I have 3 kids, and in my circle of moms, I was one of a few that chose to breastfeed. Why do you guys think that for African American women, many choose not to breastfeed and choose to bottle feed? I'll go with you, Patrice.
I believe strongly because the majority of Black women in our society are on one income. They're the sole breadwinner in their household. The majority of them are single moms raising the children alone, unfortunately, from the fatherless homes, and they they have to go into work, and I don't believe they have that support that they need to be able to take multiple breaks to pump the breast milk for their babies. Right. So it, like Nadia said, it's very demanding to breastfeed, and to keep up with the pumping and storing that milk. It's beneficial, but unfortunately I think the Caucasian women, I believe they tend to have, more stability, and they're able to stay at home. And I think, when they're at home, that's, that encourages them more to breastfeed.
Right.
Okay. Now, some of you guys used WIC to help supplement. Do they encourage breastfeeding?
They actually do. They encourage breastfeeding.
Okay.
And that's why I said, to answer your question before when you were talking about why is it, the percentage, the percentage is so low, I think it's a lot to do with education. A lot of myself in particular, my mother didn't breastfeed. Her mother didn't breastfeed. So when I chose to breastfeed, even in my own family, it was, it was questioned and it was new for them. Even my nieces and nephews, they're like, oh wow, like, what are you doing? But it's so common among, the Caucasian and other ethnicities to breastfeed.
Right.
And I loved breastfeeding. It brought upon a bond with me and my babies that I never had with, there's a bond there, but it's something that's different when you're breastfeeding and bottle feeding. And I was able to do that when I had my first child, my daughter. And it was because I had a friend of mine who strictly breastfeed, and she encouraged me to do it. And because she did it, she was just always there to encourage me and support me. Call me anytime, and I didn't have that, again, from my family members, but I was fortunate to have a friend of mine who had been there, done that, and had a few children before me and was my support system. And so she pretty much gave me, the tools and the support and then the education, because she studied it and did research on it, and I was able to take advantage of that.
Well, we're talking about education. Ella, let me ask you. You chose to bottle feed. 2 questions. Were in your circle, did the women in your circle, did they breastfeed? And then secondly, where did you learn the different types of feeding, ways to feed your child? In your family, did they breastfeed? Did they encourage it? Talk a little bit about that.
There was a bit of a mixture in my circle. Some people did breastfeed, some women did, some didn't. My mother, she breastfed, but my mother-in-law, she did not. And that was something when I decided not to breastfeed, it was a hard choice for me because, a lot of people in my family, they were saying, you really need to breastfeed.
I was going to ask, was there a stigma? Like,
Was
there pressure?
Oh, there was a lot of pressure because my friends that did breastfeed, they said, well, why would you take that away from your child? You need to formula feed.
Yeah.
And I just said, well, it's just not working. It's not that I don't want to breastfeed. It's just, it's not working at all for our family. So I decided that formula feeding was going to be the best. And there's definitely a stigma.
There's just, and you're saying yes, and I say you guys nodding.
Yeah.
There is. I mean, I can only remember back to a lot of moms, you know, they have trouble. You know, it could be very
Absolutely.
hard, and it could bring a lot of pain if you're not, the baby's not latching on right. And so again, that goes back to the education and being able to do it the right way. And once you do get it, for me, it was great and it lasted.
Well, let me ask you as this. It's obviously, babies are seeing doctors, they're going to the pediatrician. What do the pediatricians say about the choices that you guys have made when it comes to feeding the baby? Patrice, I'll go with you.
Well, I'll say initially in the hospital, the pediatrician, they also, I feel like pediatricians in general, you know, push formula almost because I believe, you know, because of the economics of it, you know, it produces, you know, money, you know, there.
okay.
And so that's why I feel like it was pushed in the hospital, but from that pediatrician, but in, but all my kids' pediatrician, Dr. Carbo Bryant, who's the best, and we love her, and she definitely encourages breastfeeding.
When I gave birth, they all were pushing breastfeeding.
Right,
It's in the
right.
classes. Did any of you, is that the same for you guys?
Right.
Your
Yeah.
pediatricians were pushing breastfeeding? Yes.
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 So, yeah. They did push breastfeeding for me, and they had someone come by who was a lactation specialist. But I really never got the assistance I needed when I was in the hospital.
Really? Do you guys get a lot of support at home, especially for you guys who are breastfeeding? I had enough stored. My husband, he can pump, but he could feed the baby at night. You know, there was
Right.
enough at home for him
Right.
to do that, so we were able to do that for a while. But do you guys get the support at home when it comes to feeding and especially breastfeeding moms?
I do. I choose, if my daughter is with me, I exclusively breastfeed her.
Okay.
The only time I give her a bottle is if she's not with me. And so a lot of time my husband is like, well, I can feed her. And I'm like, no, I want to feed her just because I want to save that extra milk.
Yeah,
But he is very supportive. My mother is very supportive. And I think that's what kind of has helped me this time around, you know, just exclusively breastfeeding. And, yeah, just having that support. And I think that lack of education in the African American community, I think that just comes from a lack of education because people still look at me, they're like, oh, you still feed your daughter that way? I'm like, what do you mean, still feed her this way? Like,
Because
yeah,
she's, how old is she?
9 months.
She's only 9 months, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so I do get it's still a lot of stigma. A lot of people still frown at me when they see me, you know, feeding my daughter, or if I tell them I do breastfeed. But I do have just a lot of support in my family. Like my mother breastfed, so
Okay.
from my first child, she was always there just helping me and helping me get through it. With my first son, he didn't latch on very well. And so that first week, it was very difficult being at home with him. He cried and I was crying and I felt like I wasn't being a good mother, and I just remember crying all night. And my mother would be there, and she would be like, "Okay, you can do this. I'm going to help you." And so my mother actually called a lactation specialist from WIC, and the lactation specialist came to our home, and she helped me learn how to, you know, different positions to put to hold my child. They also brought me a double breast pump, electronic breast pump from WIC, and so that was another purchase that I didn't have to, another expense that I didn't have to purchase. And so just having that support and my mother just saying, okay, you can do this. If the baby was fussing, she would take the baby so I can get a little break, and you know, she'll bring him back. Okay, let's try it again. And so just having that support of my mother and my husband, you know, that is helping me to continue to breastfeed. And my mother's always encouraging me, you know, yeah, she wants some milk, she wants you.
Ellie, with you, as far as with the bottle feeding, when you're out and about, just how much more easier is it for you to maneuver the baby, the formula, to do what you need to do?
It is so easy because I can I carry little 10-ounce bottles of water, and then if we're out and about, we just put a little plastic bag of the formula. I dump it in the bottle with the water and shake it up, and we're good to go.
Good to go.
And he doesn't need it heated up or anything. It's just so easy.
You guys
does
jealous?
help.
You guys jealous of that?
And that was always my problem. Like if I bottle fed my older two, I didn't really know how to use the formula, so I would always think, okay, I had to warm up the formula if I gave them the formula.
And I
But
thought that at first too, and
Right.
and I finally found out
That you
you
don't
don't
have
have to. It's like,
Right.
oh,
Well, your
Okay.
babies are getting a little bit older. When are you guys looking to start introducing solid foods?
Well, my daughter is already eating solid food. I also make her food exclusively. I don't purchase baby food. So
Wow.
yeah.
You make like applesauce and all that kind
I
of.
make it, yeah, I
Wow.
do. And so I made a commitment to, again, not spend the extra money because
All
baby food
natural
is
mom.
$1.
Absolutely.
And it's
Per
very,
jar.
very expensive. And
Yeah.
so I said, okay, you know what, I can do this. It takes a lot of time. You know, I have to plan the week out. And so a lot of times I know that I have to do it because if I don't do it, she won't have anything to eat. And so it's been great. You know, it is. Sometimes I'm up 1, 2 o'clock in the morning making her food, but I feel like it's worth it because
Right.
she's healthy.
Right. Now, when you guys were getting ready to introduce solid foods, did your parents tell you when, or the pediatrician, or how did you know?
Definitely the pediatrician.
The pediatrician for you,
Yeah.
okay.
And just introducing the foods one food at a time.
Uh-huh.
And so I just started feeding my son solid foods, and he's loving it. I did learn with my older two that I need to start with the, veggies first because they all love the
Absolutely.
fruits.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so, we just started with the solid foods, and he's loving it.
Ellie, what about you?
Yeah.
We started about a month ago. He's almost 7 months, so about a month ago,
Uh-huh.
and he loves solid food. And we did the same thing. Pediatrician recommended that we go ahead and start.
Mm-hmm.
We started out with, I think, rice cereal 1st, then we moved into the vegetables and the fruits, and it's a very messy time.
Yeah, absolutely. What about
It's a
you?
little bit different with me. My family and I, again, we had just recently had to make a sudden move, so we're actually still waiting to get our own place. We're living with our lovely parents, my parents, my husband's parents, and it's a blessing to have grandmother there. And grandmother believes that it's time for the baby to eat, and I know that it's time for him to eat because when he sees my plate, he's chewing. And that's scientifically, even from doctors, it's said that that's a sign that they're ready to be introduced to solid foods when they're able to chew, when they're able to notice that, you're eating and they
Right.
want to eat too. And so we just started introducing him to solid foods about 2 to 3 weeks ago, and he's doing good. And it's not necessarily the way that the pediatricians say to do it, but he's getting fed, and I'm okay with that.
And it works for you?
It does.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for being here. I've enjoyed our conversation and learned a lot. All
Thank
right.
you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.